Ben Lerner's novel, Leaving the Atocha Station, brilliantly portrays living as a deconstructionist and thus convinces me not to be a deconstructionist. Welcome to Thinking Wisely with Dr. Isley, where we learn to live wisely by thinking wisely. Ironically, I first heard of Leaving the Atocha Station from a video short by Dr. Ellie Anderson, a philosophy professor who produces accessible introductory videos on modern and contemporary philosophy. She recommended Lerner's novel for those who wanted to know what it is to live deconstructively. I said ironically because Lerner is a Topeka native who graduated from Brown University. I attended graduate school at Brown and now live in Topeka. You'd think that I would have heard of him before. In any case, we might be considered reverse images, since I agree with his portrayal of a deconstructionist life, but at the same time gladly reject such a life. Before I discuss the novel, which is very well written, let me explain the aspect of deconstructionist thought that is helpful for appreciating Atocha Station. Deconstruction is a theory introduced by the late 20th century French literary critic Jacques Derrida. As an approach to literature, deconstruction denies that there is any meaning inherent in a text. This is because words only have meaning in the context of their relation to other words, whose meaning is also determined by their relation to other words, whose meaning is the result of their relation to other words. Got it? Perhaps not. Let me summarize. The result of deconstructionist literary theory is that there is no determinate meaning in a text, even that of the author. A deconstruction reader will expose the contradictions within a text and the instability of language because of the limitless relations between words in a text, in the history of the understanding of the words, and of the reader's context. But according to deconstructionism, this is not bad. The reader must distrust the author, who always has an agenda. Thus, deconstructionists claim to free readers from control by the author and his text and to allow them to participate in a kind of play of discovery. While we must always read with discernment, the deconstructionist way of reading leaves us enslaved to our own prejudices and robs us of the potential for growth that reading can bring. For a different approach to reading, click on the link below to my essay, The Ethics of Good Reading. In that piece, I contrast Friedrich Nietzsche and C.S. Lewis on this issue and propose healthy reading as an act of love. I think that Lerner sees correctly the results of living deconstructively and that they are neither freeing nor enjoyable. Let's look at his novel. Adam Gordon is an American poet on a fellowship in Madrid in 2004. He narrates his own story in which he spends a year not working on his project, taking drugs, trying to make it with a couple of Spanish women, and in general, trying to impress others while feeling completely inadequate. It would be easy to write off Gordon as an insecure jerk, but this would miss the profundity of Lerner's thought and his skill in painting a picture of living deconstructively. Deconstruction may start with language and art, but it can't stop there. The end is the deconstruction of the self with the concomitant anxiety, pretense, and inability to arrive at a stable self. I've lived overseas, Portugal, Costa Rica, and Adam's experience of the foreignness of the language rings true to me. One does not feel the power of the words because of the lack of cultural and historical experience. The words don't carry the meaning because we lack the context, and our own speech can come out as lifeless abstractions. In my experience, I found this as an opportunity to learn another language and culture, and thus to broaden myself as a person. Lerner's protagonist takes a different tack. Gordon uses being a foreigner as a way to enhance his image before others, he uses facial language and silence to create the impression of profundity and mystery when he is actually feeling inadequate, not just in Spanish, but as a poet and thinker. He claims several times that poetry is about nothing. This is a statement of deconstructionism that language lacks a stable or fixed meaning. However, Gordon uses it as a tool to impress others. It creates mystery and so allows him to seem profound and to dominate others, even though he is shallow and weak. He also lies about his actions and his parents in order to gain sympathy from others or validate himself as a victim. Even his confession of his lies are fraud meant to impress others. This constant false presentation of himself leads Gordon to state that his personality was a tissue of contradictions and to resemble a poem understood as a failure of language to be equal to the possibility of figures. His fraudulence could be seen as a project in which he distanced himself from himself. Gordon is able to excuse his use of drugs, not in my desire to evade reality, but in my desire to have a chemical excuse for reality's unavailability, page 164. So Lerner's protagonist cannot connect with poems, himself, or reality because ultimately there are no stable meanings, unless the truth is paradoxically that all is inherently unstable. Gordon's insecure existence is effectively communicated by Lerner's description of him being lost in Barcelona. He leaves the hotel whose name and address he doesn't know, and the facade of which he does not remember, for a coffee, only to discover that he has no money. He becomes completely lost and can't find his way back. When he explains to a waiter the hopeless condition in which he finds himself, the waiter says humorously, "Aren't we all?" Page 155. Gordon's response is to laugh, but it is a nervous laugh. The fact is that he is insecure and anxious before a world devoid of meaning. This is hardly the stance of Nietzsche's Superman. So, what does Gordon represent? Gordon is the deconstructing self. He doesn't disappear, but is lost in a maze of created selves and in the selves of others. This can be seen from the way he describes reading the poetry of John Ashbery. I quote, "It's as though the actual Ashbery poem were concealed from you, written on the other side of a mirror surface, and you saw only the reflection of your reading. But by reflecting your reading, Ashbery's poems allow you to attend to your attention, to experience your experience, thereby enabling a strange kind of presence. But it is the presence of virtual possibilities that keeps poetry intact, because the true poem remains beyond you, inscribed on the far side of the mirror." Page 91. You experience the experience of you reading the poem, but not the poem itself. It is this constant retreat into the self, the ever changing and ever recreating self, that makes it impossible for Gordon to have a profound experience of the art itself. The closest, he says, I'd come to having a profound experience of art was probably the experience of this distance, a profound experience of the absence of profundity, page 9. In contrast to his experience, Gordon is struck by seeing a man weeping in front of a painting. As I consider why the man would have such a strong emotional reaction to art and Gordon couldn't, I believe the only answer is that Gordon is constantly self absorbed. He cannot truly enter the artist's creation because he is always analyzing his experience of it, which is, in reality, his experience of his own experience. Gordon's person is like someone standing in front of a mirror that images him, in front of a mirror behind him. The projections go on into infinity. Images of images of images interacting with images he has of the images of others, creating their own images. Deconstruction becomes an endless and lonely process from which there is no escape. And this isn't the easy relativism of, we're fine, you be you and I'll be me. Why? Because who is the I, the you, the he, the she, the we, the they? Let me move out of the realm of literary studies to the current religious phenomenon of deconstructing one's Christian faith. Lerner's novel should be a warning to those joining in the deconstruction of Christianity movement. Many of its advocates say that their deconstruction is freeing and allows them to discover their truth. They are either doing something completely different than the deconstructionist movement that Leaving Atocha portrays, and I don't think they are, or they don't know what they're getting into and not facing the music, as Lerner does in his novel. And make no mistake about it, Lerner is not saying that this is just his view. Gordon's name is Adam. He is every man, even in his uniqueness, because he reflects the human condition. And to a certain extent, I agree with Lerner. All of us are caught in the false self described in the Garden of Eden. Like Eve and Adam, we claim to be our own gods. And when we realize that we aren't, we feel shame, cover up our lie, and become strangers to one another. However, this is not the necessary final condition for us. The new or last Adam, Jesus Christ, can help deliver us from the false self that we have created in our true self, into our true self, which is to be like Christ, the true image of God, the true human being. In Christ, the uniqueness of the self is not lost, but it gives itself to him and is transformed and perfected. It is also joined with other selves and experiences constantly renewing depth. Whether thinking of the act of reading or of living, Christ opens us to a new way. It is the mystery of love and fulfills and illumines, and not the dead end of skeptical deconstruction. Choose wisely. Have you read Lerner's novel? What do you think of it? Comments are always welcome. Also, if you want to receive these videos automatically, click the subscribe button below. Thank you for listening.